My name's Michael. 36 years old, father of two, and until a couple years ago, I thought I had the kind of life you write greeting cards about. A modest house tucked into a quiet little neighborhood, two kids who still thought dad hung the moon, and a wife I'd been mad about since we were college kids fumbling our way through ramen dinners and second-hand textbooks. Anna was 4 years younger than me. Beautiful in that unassuming, quiet sort of way that crept up on you. You didn't see her coming, but when you did, you couldn't look away. She had the soft laugh and this habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. And when she smiled, really smiled, you felt like the world made a little more sense. We met at a bookstore near campus. I was staring at a copy of some old philosophy book, pretending I understood what it was talking about, and she was looking for a book of poetry. We started talking. Then coffee. Then everything. 10 years later, we had two kids, Ethan and Lily, 8 and 5. The kind of kids who still ran to the door when you got home and left sticky fingerprints on the fridge but could make your heart swell with a single, sleepy goodnight, Daddy. Life wasn't flashy. I worked in HVAC, owned a small but steady business, and Anna mostly stayed home with the kids. She tried a few jobs here and there after Lily was born, administrative assistant, temp work, a short stint at a real estate agency, but nothing seemed to stick. Not that I minded. I figured we'd figure it out together, like always. But something shifted about 18 months ago. Anna got restless. She started talking about needing more, feeling like she wasn't contributing, that maybe she'd lost a part of herself in the routine of snacks and nap schedules. I listened. I really did. I told her I understood. I encouraged her to take her time, find something that felt right. We weren't struggling financially, and I wanted her to feel fulfilled. I just didn't realize what that fulfillment would eventually cost us. After 6 months of job searching, she landed a gig as a waitress at this bar not far from downtown. Not a dive, but not exactly family-friendly either. The kind of place that was loud on weekends and smelled like fried food and spilled beer. Still, Anna was thrilled. She said it felt good to move, to work with people, to be seen. I was happy for her. Truly. I took on more of the dinner and bedtime duties and adjusted my work schedule to be there for the kids when she had evening shifts. At first, it was fine. She came home tired but smiling, told me stories about her coworkers and customers, laughed at the chaos of the kitchen. I was proud of her. This was the Anna I remembered, full of life. But then the shift. It started with the small things. Her phone, which once lived freely on the kitchen counter, was suddenly always in her back pocket or face down on the table. She started going out after her shift for drinks with the staff, even on nights when she used to come straight home. She'd laugh at texts she wouldn't show me and brush off my questions with, "It's just work stuff." I wanted to trust her. We had history, memories, kids. But trust is a funny thing. It's not just about what you know. It's about what you feel. And what I felt was off. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and realized she wasn't home. Her shift had ended at 11. No text. No missed call. Just absence. I called her phone. No answer. I sat in the living room for 2 hours waiting to hear the key in the lock. When it finally turned, she stumbled in, cheeks flushed, smelling of cigarettes and cheap perfume that wasn't hers. She said she fell asleep at a coworker's place watching movies. I didn't say anything. Not that night. I just nodded, helped her to bed, and tucked the blanket around her like she hadn't just shattered a piece of me. Over the next few weeks, the distance grew. She smiled less at home. Seemed irritated with the kids. Missed Ethan's school play and forgot Lily's dentist appointment. The Anna I knew, the mother, the partner, the gentle soul, was being replaced by someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. Eventually, I asked, "Is there someone else?" She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You're just insecure because I'm finally doing something for myself." That hurt more than I expected. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I was insecure. But I was also watching my family slowly fall apart, and I couldn't pretend it was all in my head. A few weeks later, I got my answer. Ethan had left his jacket at school, and I went to pick it up. On the way home, I passed the bar where Anna worked. Her car was in the lot. It was her day off. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled into the lot and stepped inside. It was quiet. Mid-afternoon. Just a few regulars and the dull hum of sports on TV. Then I saw her. In the back, behind the bar, laughing, really laughing, with a guy in a grease-stained cook's shirt. He had his hand on her waist. She didn't pull away. I didn't confront her then. I walked out, drove around the block 3 times before heading home. Sat in the driveway for 15 minutes, staring at the front door, knowing that everything on the other side had just changed. That night, I didn't mention the bar. Or the cook. I just watched her as she stirred spaghetti on the stove and kissed Lily goodnight and talked about her schedule for the week like nothing had happened. I watched her pretend, and I realized I couldn't pretend with her anymore. But I had two reasons not to fall apart. Ethan and Lily. They needed me more than ever. And if Anna wasn't going to be their anchor anymore, then I'd have to be the boat, the rope, and the lighthouse. So I stayed. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I just stayed. That was the start of the year that changed everything. The morning Anna left, it wasn't dramatic. No slamming doors or shouted words. Just a short conversation in the kitchen over cold coffee and half-eaten toast. She looked tired. Detached. Like she'd already packed her things in her heart long before the suitcase. I think I need some space, she said. I nodded. I wanted to ask, space from what? Me? The kids? Your vows. But I didn't. I just sat there numb as she grabbed her keys and said she'd be staying with a friend, one I didn't know. And then she was gone. The silence after she left was louder than any argument we could have had. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the fridge where our daughter's drawing of the four of us still hung, a crude crayon family with smiling faces. That morning, I took it down and tucked it into my desk drawer. I didn't throw it away. I just couldn't look at it. The kids didn't understand at first. Ethan was old enough to ask questions. Lily wasn't. She just kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Every time I'd say soon, even though I didn't know if that was true. I learned quickly that there's no manual for being a full-time single dad. You just figure it out. Pancakes from a box. Hair ties on the doorknob so I wouldn't forget to brush Lily's hair. Ethan's math homework spread across the kitchen table while I tried to prep dinner. We made it work. At night, when they were asleep, I'd sit in the quiet living room holding my coffee like it was some kind of armor. I'd check my phone even though I knew she hadn't called. She hadn't texted. Days became weeks. Her absence stretched like an echo. Then, about a month in, I found her social media. It was private, but not to me. She hadn't blocked me. Probably forgot. And there he was, the cook. In a few of her photos. They weren't subtle. Her smile wasn't either. It wasn't just a fling. It was something else now. Something she wanted the world to see. Something that wasn't us. I didn't show the kids. I never said a bad word about her to them. As angry as I was, I made a promise to myself their hearts wouldn't be collateral damage. They deserved better. So I made sure they knew love still lived in our home, even if it wasn't the same. Months passed. The kids adjusted. I learned how to make meatloaf without calling my mom. Learned the difference between ballet flats and tap shoes. I started volunteering at Ethan's school events, became the parent who knew where the extra juice boxes were. And slowly, I began to heal. I met Karen at Lily's dance studio. She was a single mom too, widowed. Her son, James, was in the same class. We started with small talk in the waiting room. Then coffee. Then one Saturday she invited me and the kids to a community picnic. Karen wasn't flashy. She had a quiet strength to her, the kind you only notice when you're paying attention. She listened without judgment, smiled with her eyes, and never once asked about Anna unless I brought it up first. The kids took to her instantly. Lily would braid Karen's hair while Ethan and James built forts out of couch cushions. It wasn't long before Miss Karen became just Karen. And for the first time in what felt like years, our home started to feel warm again. Not the same kind of warm. A different kind. A steadier one. One evening, about 11 months after Anna left, Ethan came to me with his spelling homework and asked, "Can Karen help me? She explains things better than you." I laughed. And I didn't take it personally. Because I realized something. We were a family again. Then, exactly 1 year to the day Anna walked out, she came back. I'd just gotten home from the grocery store. Karen was in the kitchen unpacking bags. Lily was at the table drawing. Ethan was playing video games in the living room. And there she was. Anna. Standing on the porch like a ghost from another life. She looked different. Worn. Smaller somehow. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey," she said softly. I didn't say anything at first. Just opened the door and stepped outside so the kids wouldn't see. "What are you doing here, Anna?" "I wanted to talk." "Can we talk?" I nodded, but I didn't invite her in. "I made a mistake," she said. "Things didn't work out with Tony." Tony. The cook had a name now. And I realized I missed my family. I crossed my arms. "You walked away. You didn't call. You didn't ask about the kids. And now you want to come back like none of that happened." Tears welled up in her eyes. Maybe they were real. Maybe they weren't. I couldn't tell anymore. I was lost, Michael. I didn't know what I wanted. I thought he was it, but he wasn't. You and the kids, you were always what mattered. That should have meant something. A year ago, it would have. But not now. Not when we had finally built something stable again. Not when someone else had stepped up where she had stepped out. I'm sorry, Anna. But it's too late. Her face crumpled. Are you seeing someone? Yes. She didn't like that. I could see it in the way her jaw clenched. The way her eyes narrowed. She's living in my house? No, I said calmly. She's helping me raise our children. Something you chose not to do. Anna looked past me into the house. She saw Karen through the window, smiling as she peeled carrots. Saw Lily hop down from her chair and run to her with a drawing in hand. That's when her smile disappeared completely. You replaced me, she said. No, I replied. You removed yourself. She didn't say goodbye when she left that day. Just turned and walked down the driveway, her heels clicking like a metronome of regret. But that wasn't the end. No, Anna wasn't done with us. Not yet. And I had no idea what storm was coming next. They say bitterness left to ferment turns into something sharp. Something dangerous. I used to think that kind of thing only lived in movies. But then again, I used to think love was enough to keep people faithful. About a month after Anna tried to come back, things took a strange turn. At first, she disappeared again, no texts, no visits, no drama. And I thought maybe she'd accepted it. Maybe she was moving on. Turns out she was just planning her next move. Karen and I had started to settle into something real. Not just a patch for my broken heart, but a partner. A teammate. She didn't try to fill Anna's shoes. She brought her own. And the kids? They were thriving. Ethan's grades were up. Lily was back to laughing the way she used to. I'd be lying if I said I didn't still carry some guilt. Some second-guessing. But every time I saw Karen reading to Lily at bedtime or helping Ethan build a volcano for his science fair, I was reminded that we were building something solid. One evening, after a long day of work, I was headed home with takeout in the passenger seat. Karen was helping the kids with a movie night. I was about 3 blocks from our house when it happened. A car ran the stop sign. T-boned me so hard I felt my teeth rattle. The next thing I knew, I was staring at my steering wheel, dazed, blood dripping from my eyebrow. People shouting. Someone called an ambulance. I was lucky. Just a concussion, some bruised ribs, and a wrecked car. Karen met me at the hospital with the kids in tow. Ethan looked like he'd aged 5 years from the worry. Lily wouldn't let go of my hand. I told them it was just a bad accident. But the next day, a police officer showed up at my house. Mr. Graves, he said, we ran the plates on the car that hit you. The vehicle was registered to a friend of your ex-wife. A man named Jeremy Dean. Jeremy. A name I didn't recognize. Not at first. But later, it came back to me. Anna had once mentioned a Jeremy. A bartender where she used to work. He wasn't involved with her, as far as I knew. But why was he driving a car straight into me? I gave a statement. Told them about the history. The breakup. Her return. The bitterness. The look in her eyes that day on the porch. A week passed. Then the officer came back. They'd interviewed Jeremy. Turns out the car wasn't just coincidentally near the intersection. He'd been asked to follow me. Get close. Scare me, he claimed. Said Anna offered him money. She wanted to rattle me. Make me afraid. Take back control. But fear has a funny way of turning into resolve. I hired a lawyer. Collected every text, every message, every documented visit she'd made. Filed a restraining order. Then I pressed charges. It wasn't easy. Part of me still saw the girl from the bookstore. The one with poetry books in her hand and starlight in her eyes. But that girl was gone. Replaced by someone I couldn't recognize. The case moved forward. Jeremy took a plea deal. Anna tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. That she'd never meant to hurt anyone. But the judge didn't buy it. Restraining order granted. Probation and mandatory counseling for Anna. And a clear message from the court, stay away from Michael and his family. After the hearing, Karen and I sat on the front porch, sipping iced tea while the kids played in the yard. You okay? She asked. I looked at her, this woman who had come into my life like a calm after the storm. I am now, I said. But I wasn't done yet. Not quite. Because as much as I wanted to leave the past behind, the truth was it still had our zip code. And I knew the only way to really be free was to leave. After the trial, things were quieter, but it was the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful. More like a lull. The calm before something else. Karen noticed it too. She'd catch me staring out the window after dinner or scrolling through listings for houses in other towns when I thought she wasn't looking. Truth was, the whole city felt tainted. Every street had a memory. Every grocery store, park bench, or familiar song on the radio had a shadow of the life Anna and I once had. And though she was legally ordered to stay away, I still felt her eyes in places I couldn't prove. People talk in small towns. Someone always knows someone who saw something. One morning after dropping the kids off at school, Karen and I sat in the driveway. We should go, I said. Start fresh. Somewhere Anna isn't a threat. Somewhere the kids don't have to hear whispers. Karen just nodded. Wherever you go, we go. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever said to me. And in that moment I knew we weren't just playing house. We were a family. A real one. We spent the next few weeks quietly preparing. We didn't tell many people. Just close friends. Karen's parents, who lived a few hours north, offered to help us get settled. I transferred Ethan and Lily to a new school, arranged for my business to be handed off to a trusted friend, and found a new job waiting in a nearby city with better schools and a safer community. The day we packed the last box, I walked through the old house one last time. Each room held echoes, some painful, some warm. I stood in the doorway of the kids' room and whispered, thank you, not to anyone in particular, just to the time we had. The good years. They weren't all lies. But they were over. Moving day was smooth. The kids were excited. They saw it as an adventure. Karen followed in her car with Lily and the cat. Ethan rode with me in the truck, headphones in, but every so often he'd glance over and smile. We arrived in the new town by mid-afternoon. It smelled different. Cleaner. Kinder, somehow. The house was smaller, but the yard was bigger. A place for a swing set. Maybe even a garden. Neighbors came by to say hello. A woman next door brought cookies. Her name was Martha. Retired nurse. Already fawning over Lily's curls and asking about Ethan's favorite books. That night, after the kids were in bed, Karen and I sat on the back porch under a sky full of stars you couldn't see from our old neighborhood. You scared? She asked. Yeah, I said honestly. But less than I was yesterday. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Then we're doing okay. And we were. The kids adapted quickly. New friends. New routines. Karen found part-time work at a local library. I took on HVAC jobs in the area, enough to keep busy, but not so much that I missed dinners or bedtime stories. A month passed. Then 2. Then 6. We started a new tradition, Friday night pizza and a movie. Ethan always picked action. Lily always tried to sneak in a cartoon. Karen always burned the first pizza. And for a while, it really did feel like the past was behind us. Until the letter arrived. Unmarked envelope. No return address. Just our last name in blocky letters. Inside, a photo. Me. Karen. The kids. At the park. Smiling. And one word scrawled in red ink across the bottom. Replaced. My stomach turned. Karen saw my face and asked what was wrong. I showed her the letter. She didn't say anything at first. Just quietly got up, checked the locks on every door, and drew the curtains. We filed a report. The police took it seriously, but without fingerprints or a return address, there wasn't much they could do. I knew who it was. We both did. Anna. But she hadn't violated the restraining order directly. Not yet. And unless she did, she was still out there, just far enough away to remain a threat. I tried not to let it show. Kept our routines. Smiled for the kids. But inside I was preparing. Not for war. But for the possibility that Anna wasn't done with us. And if she came back again, she wouldn't find the same man she left behind. 3 days after the letter, Ethan came home from school and told me someone had asked about him at recess. A lady, he said. She didn't say her name. Just asked if I liked it here. My blood ran cold. Did she talk to Lily too? I asked. Ethan shook his head. No. Just me. She left when Mrs. Parker came outside. I kept calm. Told Ethan he did the right thing by telling me. But inside I was already dialing the school. They confirmed it. A woman approached the fence during recess. She didn't enter school grounds, didn't make contact. Just stood there talking from the other side. She walked away before anyone could stop her. I didn't need a photo. I knew it was Anna. She was circling. That night Karen and I went through our security cameras again. Motion alerts from the last few days showed someone walking past the back fence around 2 a.m. 2 different nights. Still just far enough away. But this wasn't fear anymore. This was harassment. The next morning I met with our lawyer. Filed a violation of the restraining order. Reported the incident at the school, the photos, the late-night movement. The police were more responsive this time. They increased patrols around our neighborhood. School administrators were alerted. Still, I slept with one eye open. Then, 1 week later, Anna walked up to our front door like she'd never been told to stay away. Middle of the afternoon. Karen was home. So were the kids. I opened the door before she could knock. She stood there, smiling. But it wasn't a kind smile. You've done well for yourself, she said, looking past me into the house. You're violating the order, I said. Leave. I just wanted to see the kids. They're mine too. You gave that up a long time ago. Her smile vanished. You're really going to do this? I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. You've made your choices. You don't get to rewrite them now. You don't know what it's been like for me, she said, her voice rising. You don't know what he did, how he left me. I had no one. And whose fault was that? I said. You left your family, Anna. You burned the bridge. Now you want to act like the smoke wasn't your doing. Her eyes filled with something like rage. Or regret. Maybe both. I'm not going to be erased, she hissed. You think you can just replace me? I didn't replace you, I said. You left. I picked up the pieces. For the kids. For myself. For the life you threw away. That's when she leaned in, just enough for only me to hear. This isn't over. Then she turned and walked away. The police arrived within minutes. Took our statement. Anna had fled, but they filed it as a direct violation. A judge issued a warrant for her arrest that same evening. Not jail time, but a mandatory hearing and, more importantly, a revision to the restraining order with a wider radius and new terms: no contact, supervised visits only if approved by court. But something in me still felt unsettled. Because you can put up fences, but fences don't stop shadows. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Michael, the voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Kellis from Oak Ridge PD. We have Anna in custody. She was found outside your children's school after hours. She was intoxicated and had attempted to enter the building. My heart dropped. She's safe, but she's being held for evaluation, he added. We'll be in touch. It felt final, but sad. Karen and I sat on the couch that night. No words. Just the hum of the ceiling fan above us and the quiet crackle of the fire. I don't feel angry anymore, I said finally. Karen reached for my hand. I just feel done. And I was. I didn't know what the future held for Anna. Court dates, counseling, maybe a new path she'd have to walk alone. But for me, I was already moving forward. Not escaping. Not hiding. Just living. With my kids, my partner, and a future that, for the first time in years, felt fully ours. It's strange how peace doesn't always come with a parade. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like the moment after a storm when everything's still dripping but the sky is finally clear. 3 months passed after Anna's arrest. No more letters. No unexpected faces at the school. No footprints by the fence. Just calm. The court ordered her to complete a treatment program and undergo a psychological evaluation before she could even request supervised visitation. We didn't hear a word from her. The silence this time felt like relief instead of anticipation. Life didn't just go on, it bloomed. Karen and I planted a garden that spring. Tomatoes, zucchini, snap peas. The kids helped dig out the beds and name the worms they found like pets. Karen laughed every time I overwatered the herbs, which was often. I didn't mind, it gave me something to nurture. Ethan made the soccer team. Lily started drawing pictures of our house that always included Karen next to me, her stick figure smiling wide. At bedtime, when Lily whispered, "I love you, Daddy," and then added, "I love you too, Karen," I knew we were okay. We weren't a patched-up version of the past, we were something entirely new. One evening after dinner, I took a walk with Ethan. Just the two of us. We stopped at the small creek behind the park and skipped stones like we used to. "Dad," he asked, "are we gonna stay here forever?" I looked out at the water. Thought about everything we'd come through. "I hope so," I said. "Does it feel like home to you?" He nodded. "Yeah. It feels better than before." Like, safe? That one word meant everything. The next day, I brought home a surprise for the kids, a dog from the shelter. A mutt with big ears and a goofy name, Pickles. Lily squealed. Ethan immediately taught him how to shake. Karen just shook her head with a smile and said, "You're officially outnumbered now." And I was. By love this time. Karen and I didn't rush anything, but eventually we talked about marriage. About making it official. She said she didn't need a wedding to know she was in this for life. But still, on a quiet summer night with the kids asleep, I asked. It wasn't a grand proposal. No skywriting. Just me, a simple ring, and a whispered question on our back porch under the same stars we used to wish on. She said yes. We didn't make a big announcement. Just sat the kids down one morning and told them we're going to be a family for real. Ethan smiled. Lily clapped. Pickles barked. In that moment, everything felt whole. Sometimes I still think about the past. Not often. Just flashes. A moment in a bookstore. A baby's first cry. A ring on a finger that's long been returned. But they don't haunt me. They remind me that I survived. That we survived. And now we're home. Really home. Not because of the house. Not because of the yard or the school district or the fresh coat of paint on the walls, but because every night under the same roof we laugh. We love. We rest. They say healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a winding road full of strange turns and surprise stops. But every so often you look around and realize you've traveled far enough that the old places, the ones that hurt, aren't visible anymore. Our wedding wasn't big. Just close friends, Karen's parents, the kids, and a few folks from the community who had quietly become part of our extended family. We held it in our backyard, surrounded by the garden Karen and I had planted with our own hands. Lily scattered flower petals like it was a parade. Ethan stood beside me as my best man, grinning with all the awkward pride an 11-year-old could muster. When Karen walked down that short aisle, just a stone path, really, she wore a dress she picked off a rack in a second-hand shop. Simple. Elegant. Perfect. And I stood there realizing that somehow, despite all the wreckage, I'd found my way home again. We said our vows beneath the same oak tree where I'd first asked her out on a picnic. They weren't traditional vows. Just promises we wrote ourselves. Honest, a little clumsy, and full of heart. Afterward, we danced barefoot under string lights. Pickles barked at the music. Lily twirled until she fell over giggling. Ethan stuffed his face with cake, then tried to claim it was Karen who did it first. It was a good night. A great one. And it stayed that way. Life didn't suddenly become easy. But it became ours. The following year brought its fair share of challenges. Karen's mom had a health scare, I lost a major HVAC client, and Ethan entered middle school with all the grace of a wrecking ball. But through it all, we kept showing up for each other. And Anna? She faded like a shadow when the lights come on. We learned that after her evaluation and court-mandated therapy, she quietly relocated out of state. No calls. No letters. No court petitions for visitation. Just silence. I don't know if that was her form of acceptance or just another form of retreat. Either way, it brought closure in its own strange way. Every once in a while, I catch myself wondering what I'd say to her if she ever did show up again. I don't think I'd raise my voice. I don't think I'd rage. I think I'd just say, I hope you find peace too. Because by then I had. Karen and I bought a small camper and started taking weekend trips with the kids. The four of us and Pickles driving through backroads chasing sunsets and gas station ice cream. It wasn't glamorous, but it was magic in its own right. One night, after the kids had gone to sleep in the camper bunks, Karen and I sat under a blanket by a quiet lake. The fire was low and the stars were loud. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The life you had before? I thought about it. Really thought. I miss the version of it I believed in, I said. But not the reality. I don't miss feeling small in my own home. I don't miss the silence that felt like punishment. What we have now, it's not perfect, but it's honest. It's kind. She nodded. Yeah, that's how I feel too. Then she leaned into me, rested her head on my shoulder, and we just sat there. Content. As the years passed, the kids grew. Ethan developed a knack for computers, took apart an old laptop and rebuilt it just to see if he could. Lily? She started writing stories, little books stapled together, filled with princesses and space, aliens and dogs that could talk. We encouraged every bit of it. Karen went back to school part-time, studying counseling. Said she wanted to help other women like herself, like me. People who'd been through the fire but hadn't let it burn them down. And me? I kept working. Kept fixing furnaces and AC units. But more than that, I started teaching. Took on an apprenticeship program for local high schoolers. It felt good passing something on. Giving back. We started hosting neighborhood dinners. Potlucks. Game nights. Nothing fancy. Just laughter and stories and the kind of warmth that makes people stay longer than they planned. Karen joked we were becoming those people, the ones with a full fridge and an open door. But I didn't mind. One summer we hosted a barbecue. Half the block showed up. Ethan manned the grill. Lily organized a scavenger hunt. Karen made her famous peach cobbler. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I stood there, watching it all unfold, the music, the kids running barefoot, the smell of charcoal and fresh-cut grass. And it hit me. This wasn't just where we lived. It was where we belonged. Not in the sense of ownership or property, but in the sense of being known. Being seen. Being rooted. It had taken heartbreak, betrayal, and starting over more times than I cared to count, but we made it. We had a life that was good. And kind. And full. And no matter what came next, we had each other. So I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the life you planned isn't the life you live. Sometimes it's better. Not because it's easier, but because it's earned. And every smile, every laugh, every quiet moment at the end of a long day, you feel it more deeply, knowing what it took to get there. We didn't just survive. We built something. And this time, we built it right.